All right, we got the barrel installed in the lathe. I've gone ahead and parted off the stub. They always recommend parting off 1 inch on both ends. With centerfire rifles, typically you don't have to part anything off on the breech end because you're going to be boring out essentially all the rifling, you know, like think of a 308 case or whatever. You'll be boring out almost 2 inches worth of material, so not super important to do that on a centerfire rifle. However, 22 LR, you know, we're real short cartridge, so we want to ensure that we're getting past any less than ideal rifling that, you know, sometimes it gets buggered up from the machining process. They're shoving hardened centers in those barrels to get the outside contour machined and all that stuff. So best to, in this case, we're just going to part it off. Plus, the barrel's already 27 inches and we're going to end up at 24, so we got 3 inches to play with. So anyway, and then this, obviously the stub here has all the information, serial number of the barrel and the bore size and the groove size. I always send this back to the owner, the new owner of the rifle, just for their records and as a keepsake or whatever they want to do with it. But Krieger, in this case, it's the Krieger Barrel, so they always guarantee their barrels to shoot, you know, great. So if there's any issue, he has proof that this was actually a Krieger barrel. It's kind of hard to tell after you machine it off and turn it into chips. So, in a centerfire case, I'll just cut off a real thin slice of that. But again, in this case, you know, a little bit under 1 inch there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do some rough machining on this. We got to take off, this barrel is a 1.250 inch diameter barrel. And we got to get down to the major diameter, which is quite a bit less than that. It's almost half the size to fit the CZ action. As we were showing earlier with the bushings, the bolt bore raceway bushings, we were a size of 708. So we need to get down to that, basically down to that size for the portion of the barrel ahead of the threads, right? So we got to come down, like I said, almost half. We got to take about almost half of the material off of here. So what we're going to do is a roughing operation. I got a carbide cutter installed here, and we're going to hog off most of the material. So we're going to get close, probably give ourselves 50 thousandths or something to work with in length and diameters. Once we're that close, we're gonna switch up the setup here. So all we're doing is we're gripping this real tight with the big beefy 4-jaw chuck. So after that's done, we're gonna switch over to a different setup in order to dial in the bore of the barrel. So right now, we're centered off the bore here in front. When we do the final machining, we want to make sure that bore is running as straight and true as possible. So, like in my other videos for centerfire rifles, we're going to do the same exact procedure, get that barrel dialed in and aligned straight, at least here in the chamber portion, to accommodate or to compensate for the any curvature of the bore or misalignment further down the way. So we'll get into that later. For now, we're just going to hog off this material. So first thing we're going to do is face this off to get it somewhat square, because this was just facing after the parting operation. So we got a little extra material there to work with. We're going to lay out a line to cut to for our length, and then just like I said, we're just going to go hog wild on the machining portions until we're close, and then we'll go from there. So there we go. Switch over, do our precision setup, and do the rest of this machining. Slightly different setup here, obviously. So we've switched over to the same jig that we used to true up the receiver. And kind of the same exact concept here. We're going to use this to align this thing, you guessed it, both radially and axially. So what I got here is I've got a long reach indicator here. This is the Minatoyo 1/10,000th indicator with an extended probe. So that's going to allow us to obviously come in there a little bit deeper than normally with that little stubby probe. A little bit of a caveat on the extended probe, it reduces the resolution of the indicator. So instead of 1/10, we're getting, I don't remember what the math is on this, but we're getting a little bit more than that, like maybe 2.5 tenths, something like that. But it is what it is. It's a trade-off to be able to reach in there far enough to be able to align the barrel. And so the idea here is we are trying to align the bore right here in the chamber section so that area of the barrel is running straight and true. The back end of the barrel is inevitably going to have a little bit of a high side. So that's going to allow us to time the barrel typically high side up, so you'll be able to get a little bit more elevation out of your scope. So basically the end of the barrel is going to be kind of slightly, it's definitely not that much, but it will be spinning a little bit off from the front here due to the curvature of the bore. Stuff that I'm not going to get into. Go ahead and look up my other videos on centerfire stuff. That's a horse that's been beaten to death. So anyway, we're going to align this barrel in the same manner as the action, essentially. So right now we're in as far as we can get it. So that means the set screws up front will be able to center the barrel radially. And then the back screws will back everything out and use the back screws to align everything axially. Same concept, right? So in this situation, we're looking for the high side. We're going to go ahead and adjust. Okay, it's close, so we're going to check out the back end here. Let's get that probe as close as we can. You can see it's way out, so there's low. So we're going to work on the low side. Bring that barrel in to alignment. It's a big, heavy barrel, too. But we're looking for the same thing, total axial and radial alignment, as close as we can get it. And so if you're watching and you're wondering why that needle's bouncing up and down, well, we're reading right off the limbs and the grooves of the rifling. Most people probably know that, but I thought I'd point that out just in case. I know there's always people new to the channel, and I appreciate your watching this. Hope you're getting something out of it, and if I may say so, if you're interested in a super high-end, fully blown custom .22 rifle like this, then all of our contact information is in the description. So now we're close enough that we can move over to the wrench and start snugging this thing in. Low, high, low, low. And this as well, we want to make sure this is snugged down, definitely tighter than the receiver, because big old 1.25 inch barrel diameter, we're certainly not going to be crushing anything. Plus, there's no machining going on anything except right here, right? So this is not being compressed whatsoever by anything. So we want to make sure these are really quite a bit more tight, significantly more tight than the receiver, because thread cutting, there's a lot of tool pressure being induced into the steel. And so that's why, you know, during the hogging process, as I got closer and closer, I reduced my depth of cut, because we don't want to disturb a lot of times stress relief will happen and occur in the steel. So don't want that. Don't want to mess with anything there. So yeah, like I said, I'm trying to get this thing a lot tighter so that there's nothing that shifts during the machining. The machining. Yep, that's looking good. Okay, so just a little bit more fine tuning. This is basically the concept here, so I just wanted to showcase that. This is what goes into each and every barrel. Comes through our shop. We cut no corners when it comes to dialing in off of the bore, completely aligned both radially and axially, providing for the straightest and most concentric chamber and threads, all the features of the breech for any precision rifle, whether that be for hunting, competition, or what have you. So we'll cut it here, and we'll come back to do the actual machining operations on the breech here, get this fit to the receiver and chambered. Okay, now that we've got the barrel lined up and aligned properly, we're going to go in here and cut the face so that's square with everything else. Now the breech face is completely squared up with the barrel that's now been aligned, and we can move on to the next step. So in this case here, it's 22 rimfire. It's a little bit different technique for fitting and chambering a barrel. Unlike a centerfire, where headspace is determined off of the bolt face itself in relation to the torque shoulder of the barrel. The distance between that two, I'm not really going to go in depth on that, but the big difference with a rimfire, 22 rimfire, is headspace is going to be based off of similar dimensions. Except for in this case, it's going off the thickness of the rim. In the case of this customer, it's going to be Eley ammunition. So that's a certain decimal inch value, which is determined on the length of the tenon itself in relation to the receiver. Again, I'm not going to get into that technicality of all that stuff, but in this case, our chamber basically does not, the depth of the chamber does not dictate as much as it does with a centerfire cartridge. So in that regard, we're going to go ahead and cut the chamber first. We've spent all this time carefully aligning the bore of the barrel, so we don't want to disturb that critical alignment by cutting threads and remachining all this other steel. Those features are equally as important, and we're going to be checking, but since everything is perfectly aligned right now at this point, and we haven't introduced any stress to the barrel itself, we're going to go ahead and knock the chamber out first. All right, so this is the chambering reamer we're going to be using. This is made by PTG, Pacific Tool and Gauge, and this is a reamer specially made for Eley ammunition. So first what we're going to do is make sure it fits the bore. So it's a piloted reamer, and this live pilot here on the front, I'm going to make sure that actually fits the bore. And that feels a little on the tight side. This bore size is 217, and that previous pilot was a little on the big side. And this is a 2166, which actually feels a lot better. We definitely don't want the pilot being too tight, binding up on the walls of the chamber or the rifling. So this one slides in real nice and doesn't have any perceivable slop. So we're going to use that one, which is good because that means the barrel bore is a little on the tight side. So this is a very nice reamer holder, and it's floating. So it gives us the ability to line it up with the bore, but it has the ability to float and follow the bore. Of course, in this case, we're not going very deep at all. So as long as your tailstock is aligned with the bore, which it is, this will follow perfectly straight. Okay, so we've only fed in about 100 thousandths, and I'm just checking visually to make sure there's no chatter or any weirdness going on, and it looks like our lead is cutting very nicely. You can see the transition of that to the rifling right behind it. So we're good to go. Let's keep going. And I got my hand here on the holder just to feel, because I can feel if there's anything weird going on. So if you don't catch it early, it can be a disaster. It's got some nice chip load there. Let's pull out, clean up, check it. Check it with a live round that we're going to be using. And so it's all about feel. And that's about what I would expect. That's about how far we've gone in so far. So about a quarter of the way through. But these 22 rimfires don't take very long at all. It's not much material to cut away. Reamer's still going in straight. That's good. I'm going to take a full turn. Pull out. And it may not look like much, but we don't want any chip buildup going on, gouging our chamber up. So we have to clean often. There's no rush in this process. I'll be right there, hold on. Okay, we're getting real close here. So now I'm going to measure, because I want a certain amount of what's called stick out here. And yeah, we're not We're about halfway there. I just want to measure, see where we're at. .221, so we're about 100 away. And you can feel that bullet's getting jammed up in the rifling, which is what we want, but not this far away. Not yet. Okay, so we're just going to need one more pass on this, and it's basically the same thing, so I'm just going to cut it here. Okay, this chamber is done. Turned out very nice. There's very little, it's a very nice fit. No perceivable slop in there, meaning chamber is cut to exact dimension, not oversized. We'll obviously measure the case after it's fired to make sure. But I also have the appropriate amount of stick out. Now, if you're unfamiliar with that, this just ensures that the bullet is going to be jammed into the rifling. Especially with Eley ammunition, this stuff is very soft, the lead, so you want to make sure it's essentially jammed into the rifling. Totally unlike a center fire, where there's way more pressure involved. And normally with center fire, you're going to want a little bit of a jump, a little bit free bore here. Well, in this case, we want as little free bore as possible, and in this case, there's none. So essentially, that's as far in as I can get it with my thingy. But when the bolt comes in and closes, it's going to force that projectile into the rifling, into the lens and groove. So just one of those things that adds to consistency shot to shot, making for a superiorly accurate rifle. Superiorly, is that a word? Superiorly? So it always kind of makes me chuckle when I'm chambering a 22 rimfire, because it's almost like you can't even tell it's cutting. You know, when I'm used to, like, here's a 375 Chi-Tac, so subtle difference there, but you can see something like this takes a heck of a lot longer. You're doing a lot of pre-boring, pre-drilling, and obviously shoving an enormous reamer in. Takes quite a bit more time and effort, but it's the same concept. But if you are unfamiliar with centerfire rifle stuff, that is kind of the difference there. All right, now we shall finish off the breech features. We left everything a little large and a little short, so we'll be cutting the tenon length for headspace, and then machining the threads, the new threads for the newly threaded receiver, and then, well, that's about it in this case, actually. So we'll go ahead and get that done. So let's get that length done first. Gonna want 1.191. is what we came up for our tenon length for our particular receiver. Don't use these numbers. You have to measure everything, especially since I've cut away from the receiver face to square it up. That means everything's a little bit shorter, so these numbers do not mean a thing other than for this particular receiver. Each one's going to be a little different, especially if you're going to be machining on them. So we don't have to use bolt shims, we don't have to use anything, any other non-proprietary items to achieve. We're going to machine everything precisely to also this ammunition, which calls for a specific head space based off the rim thickness. So we basically have to back this feature up here, the torque shoulder, back that up, make it longer. Now we're going to use a depth micrometer to more accurately measure this length because it is very critical. Super critical length, so we're 1.166 and a little bit. I'm going to leave a little for a finishing operation. Yeah, this will leave just enough material to finish. Okay, so that is going to be our 0 stopping point in Z. And then we can turn on the power feed for this next, for the turning operation. So since we have our chamber finished, we can't back the face of this up anymore. So we have to hit this length dead on. Now we're going to work on our major diameter for the thread. Taking nice light cuts. There's no reason to hog this off. We've already done that with the carbide. So that's why we switched over to the high-speed steel cutter. Much better surface finish. And we can sneak up on a dimension a lot easier than we can with carbide. Carbide likes to hog things off quickly. Super light depth of cut. We want to be just under the major diameter of the thread. Okay, great. We're just about 1/1000th under. So the major diameter is now achieved. Now there's a feature right up front we're going to have to cut in. If you recall, the World Bore Raceway bushing was 7085. And for this feature, we want that feature of the barrel is not going to have any threads on it for a few reasons, but we want that to have a nice fit, but certainly not interference fit. So we're going to cut that down to maybe 707. Try that. That should be able to fit nicely. All right, 707.5, that should be good enough. That is done. Now we just need to finish off our length to the exact dimension. verify. 1.191. Perfect. Okay, so this cutter is very sharp cutter that gets in there and is able to face off the torque shoulder. And then we also dug in just slightly to the minor diameter. Now we already cut, a relief groove in the receiver, so we don't need one on the barrel. But I wanted to ensure that that was a nice shoulder, that when the action actually torques up to the shoulder, there's no material in the junction there to interfere with the solid lockup. So that's why we came in and then moved slightly to the right to cut a little bit out of there. All right, so now all that's left is threading. Okay, everything's set. We're ready to take our first scratch pass. We're gonna verify threads per inch is proper and then proceed to thread to depth. First thing I'm going to do is cut a chamfer on the front. Just break that edge. Okay, just like roughing off the material on the barrel, I'm going to switch out the cutter to a fresh edge because we have precision threads in the receiver, so we want to make sure these threads match those exactly. If I already use the same bit, that's kind of my roughing bit, so the tip's kind of rounded off so it doesn't cut down to the minor diameter exactly, whereas this one is a fresh bit, so it's got a very sharp point to it, so we know that that is going to cut the minor, and all we have is about 10 thousandths left. So I'm not going to advance the tool right now to accommodate for that loss of material. Yep, pretty much what I expected. So now we can proceed down to the final depth of the thread. You can see it's lifting a very nice chip there. Okay, there we're starting to grab. The thread's starting now, so just creep up on it and take a little bit at a time until we get down to a good fit. There we go. Started in all the way to the shoulder. Got very minimal, just enough clearance, but there is no perceivable slop in there. So we've hand fitted the threads to the receiver, and we need a little bit of a little tolerance in there for the threads to actually bind together. When you're torquing them up, you gotta realize all those threads need to bear up against each other. If we were binding on the tops of the bottom of the thread, if it were too tight, then we wouldn't get a very proper torque on that shoulder, which is what we're looking for. That's where everything maintains straightness. And so as you can see, I'm not struggling. There's no binding going on here whatsoever. That's all perfectly fit to the receiver threads now. And we get a real nice strong, you can hear that slam into the torque shoulders. You know, those two surfaces that are exactly square, perfect, mating together. So when that's under final torque with a wrench, that'll be a very, very strong bond. Okay, so that portion of it's done. We've got our thread tenon complete. And then while I'm here, Check it with the bolt. It's always good practice. So with the handle, I can torque it on just a little bit more. And then we want to see that thing close like that. So now we know that the bolt has no interference and our headspace should be right on the money. So I'm confident this is fine. I mean, we've done it plenty of times before, but anyway, this is common practice. But the bolt closes, the thing is locked in there. There is no slop whatsoever in that. And we have a perfect junction from the male threads to the female threads. Once again, it's just a premium level of service you'll come to expect here. Using a manual machine gives me the ability to hand fit each barrel. Even though we cut to specific and exact dimensions and tolerances, there's still that aspect of having it hand fit, being able to do that rather than using a robot or some sort of computer controlled machine. This is hands-on from beginning to end, so there's really no better way to do it, really. I mean, it takes a little bit longer time, but you know, these days you get what you pay for. Would you rather have a robot make your rifle or a skilled craftsman that's monitoring each step of the process and ensuring that everything is perfect from beginning to end, right? So anyway, let's see what's left. So right now we're going to taper this barrel. The transition right here, I don't like that big step there, so we're going to just give it a little bit of a taper to ease into the receiver right there. So now all that's left on the breech, other than the tapering, is going to be the extractor cuts and the little the shelf for basically for the thing to feed properly and everything like that.